Howdy, Aggs. Welcome to Aggie Growth Hacks, the podcast sponsored by the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship at Texas A&M. And we're dedicated to helping entrepreneurs improve their business, connect with other Aggie entrepreneurs, and support one another. I'm your host, Greg Martin, fighting Texas Aggie class of 2001.
And I'm your co-host, Chris Hunter, fighting Texas Aggie class of 1998.
Whoop! Well, we got a little story for you, Aggs. Fighting Texas Aggie class of 1996 and former walk-on for your fighting Texas Aggie football team, Todd Moore, is now the Chief Revenue Officer for Admiral Distribution. Todd has grown Admiral Distribution over the last 7 years to be one of the fastest growing Aggie-owned companies, winning back-to-back Aggie 100 awards in 2023 and 2024.
So pass it back and listen up to Todd as he shares some good bull.
Well, Todd, thank you so much for joining us on Aggie Growth Hacks. We were talking pre-roll. It's very, very kind of you to fly all the way in from Argentina just for that's recording this episode. But thanks for making the trip. Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Little jet lag, but ready to go.
Well, you're doing great. And I know this is going to be an amazing conversation. And we can't wait to dig into your entrepreneurial journey, your globetrotting journey, and then just kind of how you have grown Admiral Distribution. So how about you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us about your company and where you started and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, I'll just backtrack. I went to high school in Singapore, which is where I met my wife, and she happens to be from Argentina, which is kind of how I got there. But I started working remote for my old company 13 years ago there in Argentina. And just so happens my partner now at Admiral Distribution worked in Houston at our old company. And he said, we got to start something. We got something. And he begged me for about 6 months. He'd only been there 2 years. I'd been at that our old company 18 years. So it was a little tougher for me to leave.
Oh, yeah.
And I lived in Argentina. So we were taking a big risk to start something. And he said, well, I'm not taking no for an answer. So he didn't really give me a choice. So I got to give him a lot of credit on that. But we were taking a big risk, but we thought we had a good idea of how to get something going. He said, I'm going to start it I'll start it in August, but you're going to be there January 1. And I turned my 2 weeks notice in and I was there January 1 from Argentina. And that's how we started. And we started with 4 people and we're now at about 25 and 3 locations. So we started in a very small office about the size of this, maybe 2 of these. And now we have 4 warehouses and probably 30, 40 fold the space. So a little bit about Admiral. I guess I didn't mention that, but we started with building envelope insulation, which we learned a little from our old company. We weren't very good at our old company. That's what we thought we could be good at. We had some customers say, if you guys could do this, we would buy from you. And that's how we grew the company slowly but surely in Houston. We got 3 or 4 customers. A lot of them happened to be waterproofing contractors. And next thing you know, they're like, you got to get waterproofing. You got to get waterproofing. Want to buy it from you. And that process is a lot easier said than done just to go get waterproofing. That's not how that works. A lot of politics. There's, 4, 5, 6 big manufacturers and they don't just give it to you. There's a lot of things that have to happen. So slowly but surely, one decided to take a risk on us. And that's kind of when everything changed. At that moment, we opened Dallas and shortly after that opened Austin. And slowly getting those 2 going, hopefully up to the level we got Houston going. So
what is, I'm a dummy, what is building envelope insulation? Is that what you said? I mean, like when you said that, I think of like the fumigation tents. Right. I'm sure that's not it.
That's not it. So basically, there's a code that came out probably about 10 years ago that required continuous building envelope insulation, what created that market. So that's just basically saying when a school gets built in Texas, and as you guys probably know, schools get built like crazy here. So it's a great market to be in, K through high school. When a school gets built, they're required to have continuous insulation for the R value, basically to keep the cold or keep the heat in and keep the cold and keep the hot out. And every commercial building in Texas, based on the code, has to have some type of building envelope insulation. It's typically one of 3 products: a mineral wool, a polyiso, or an XPS board. That's a rigid type insulation. And a lot of the waterproofing goes hand in hand with that, which brought us into that eventually.
Interesting. So what is the waterproofing then? What is it? Does that go around it? What is that?
Typically, there's waterproofing can be complicated. There's some very critical waterproofing. And on a school, there's what we call air barrier. And that's how we grew our market first. So the air barrier goes on the wall first and the insulation goes on top of it. So it's kind of like a lot of the customers we're dealing with do both. So that's kind of how Admiral grew with our customers. We were selling the insulation to the guys that were also doing the air barrier. And waterproofing is another category. Air barriers keeping the flow of air in, but also allowing it enough out to where any moisture that is in that building can get out also. And so we're selling the thermal insulation and the air barrier. And that's how we really grew Admiral in Houston and how we decided to open in other locations. Go back and answer your question. There's deck coatings where if you have a parking garage, you have a coating on the deck to protect it. If there's structures underneath, offices, what have you, you have waterproofing to protect on top of that parking structure so nothing gets down in there. So that's where more critical waterproofing happens. Any decks, hotels that may have 3 stories, but they have a pool deck, but you have a lot of offices or rooms underneath, that deck, it becomes not a roof anymore. It's a deck. And that's where it becomes critical on the waterproofing side. So you get a little more technical when it comes to the actual waterproofing and a lot of chemistry.
Interesting. So tell us a little bit about, we're Aggie growth hacks here, right? And we're all Aggies. What's something that you learned? What's the one thing that you learned at A&M that you've been able to apply to your business as you guys grow?
I just think one thing I didn't tell you guys, I was a walk-on to the Aggie football team from 92 to 96. Cool. One of the coolest things I did at A&M, obviously having the experience to walk on and play football, that was during the R.C. Slocum era. And just those experience of the two-a-days, the Southwest Conference, we were winning then. It was like 4 years of straight winning, right? But after I actually worked for the team in the video lab for 2 years. So even though I have a lot of interesting stories on the football side, the video inside was probably the craziest thing I did. And on the Aggie experience side, I videoed from the top of the Superdome. I videoed from the Jumbotron for 2 straight years, every home game. I'm sure you guys know the Sir Parker play in the Big 12 championship game. I was videoing that from the end zone. So some of those memories stick out more so on the video side because I was actually videoing it. And the
cool
places I videoed from, I think it was Ohio State. We played in the Sugar Bowl. I think that was 98, I believe.
Yeah, 98.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was at the top of the Superdome. Up in the rafters. That's where I watched the game from. I videoed the game. So pretty, as far as memories go, that has to stick out for me because of just the experience.
That's cool.
And just dealing with adversity and learning that challenge just to do that. I think that's kind of my mindset is like, I'm going to find a way. And I think that experience and just being an Aggie, and I think part of Admiral Distribution, and I guess one thing I didn't say is my partner was in the Navy, which is why it's called Admiral Distribution. I think the Navy Aggie connection and the integrity that I think Aggies bring and the Navy side that brings, I think that's the core of our values is bringing integrity. And I know we talked about the hiring process a little earlier, but is hiring people with high integrity. And that's what we're looking for.
And so kind of going into the core values and have that. So I'm assuming integrity is one of your core values. You mind sharing us some of the other core values that you have and really how have you used that to grow from Houston to now having 2 spaces in Houston? I think you also said you're in Dallas and Austin as well.
Correct. Some of the other core values, one is listen. And I think it's listening to our customers, knowing what they need and truly understanding what helps them make money and how do we adjust, which is another one of our core values is sniff the cheese, knowing when to change and being able to change and comfortable to change and staying ahead of that curve to change. And kind of our main thing other than integrity is some of the things we do there's some chemistry involved. There's all kind of things in waterproofing. It's a system, and delivering and having that extreme knowledge and delivering that extreme value is, we're selling a product, but at the end of the day, we're really selling that extreme value that we bring on the knowledge side of it.
So is that knowledge gained through like academic, like chemistry degrees and everything, or is it just you have been in the industry for so long, different R factors, building code and how they all work together?
Exactly. It's how they all work together, understanding building codes, understanding some of the waterproofing products, how they react together, how they adhere to certain substrates. And it's watching a lot of YouTube videos. And we've gone through a ton of training, because the waterproofing we really got into about 5 years ago. And we've just been lucky enough to have some really good partners on the manufacturing side that have trained us. And it's just kind of that thirst for knowledge. How do we know as much as them, and how do we know as much or more that our customers be able to really help them and provide that value?
So, all right, you started with the insulation, right, side of things, went into waterproofing. What's next?
I think we have so much growth on the waterproofing side that we're still learning. It's one of those things, I'm not sure you could ever learn it all unless you're the guy installing it for 10 or 20 years. I don't know if you could ever learn it all. So there's still a lot of growth there. We do other things. We do fire stopping, which kind of goes hand in hand with waterproofing. We sell caulking. So there's some guys that don't do a lot of waterproofing that will caulk windows, will caulk joints, and we sell all that stuff. So the fire stopping side of it can be very interesting and can be a very technical sell. So there's a lot to learn there. And we also have a little niche business that has nothing to do with any of that. We sell a product called heat trace for winterizations to keep your pipes from not freezing in the winter. And you'd think in Texas, maybe we don't need that much. But as you probably know, the last 5 years, we've had a couple of major freezes, and all it takes is one. But per code, every commercial job that has outdoor piping that could freeze, the common person wouldn't know it, but it all has heat trace on it. And so that's another thing we do, that we kind of have a little division on the side that does nothing but that.
So do you actually go out and like do the installation, the application of these different products, or are you just the wholesaler being able to provide the contractor, here's the material that you're going to need, and then you source it up the stream and it's on the job site when they need it?
We're just the wholesaler, but we do provide a ton of support, and a lot of times on the job site. And whether it be us, the manufacturer, and the customer that's putting it on, or just us and the customer, we provide a lot of that service on the job site, at least when they start the job, to get them going. And we on the heat trace side, we do a lot of design. So, and we're helping get waterproofing systems that are optimal too. So we're doing a lot of that on the front end.
So a lot of engineering, a lot of design, back and forth, probably with the architects and the entire the GC team and everything, because it kind of comes in as like, well, yeah, you vaguely made this line, architect, but this is the detail that you GC need to have. Otherwise, this product isn't going to work. It's not going to adhere to it. It's not going to be effective.
You'd be 100% right. So it's us really working with the manufacturer, with the contractor at the very beginning when they're bidding these jobs, to make sure we're giving them the optimal system, which kind of goes back to our core values, delivering that extreme value of, hey, there's not one way to do it. There might be four. And for this particular job, we're kind of thinking this might be the home run here. So we do a lot of that. Yeah. So one interesting thing, I know you guys didn't ask this question, but is to get into to be a distributor in waterproofing. I think the crazy thing is, looking back 7 years ago, we didn't even know what waterproofing was. And then fast forward, now we're in the middle of it. And when you look back, it's not easy. There's not many people that can just say, I want to start a waterproofing distribution company. It just doesn't work like that. You probably had 2 or 3 major distribution companies here in Texas that have been here 30 plus years. So as you can imagine, we were the little guy, and still are to an extent, but we're battling every day the 2 giants, which I think is part of the reason we like it so much, is we're the guy that's kind of taking down the giant, or attempting to.
Yeah. And there's really great advantages to being the giant, but there's also a lot of advantages to being David, and to be able to be nimble, to be able to be like, okay, well, if you need something changed, you're talking to me, and I'm going to make I've got the authority to say yes or no, and to adapt to how your need, versus going all the way up to the chain, then all the way back down, getting the yes or no, and then all the way, that GCs and contractors, and with construction going as crazy as it is in Texas, they don't have time to wait 14 days for a yes on a simple change.
Yeah, I think, and I don't think I mentioned this, but another core value of ours is just to be flexible and have that agility to do exactly that. And being the little guy 100% gives us that advantage.
So, all right, going back to, right, you said earlier that, it was really hard to kind of break into that market. And you even just said that, right? How did you break into the waterproofing market? Like, is there a hack that we can learn from you, right, on how you kind of broke into that really competitive market?
Yeah, I think it was our customer service to our customers on the insulation side, which happens to be sometimes the waterproofer does the insulation also. Without them, we wouldn't have gotten it. We really wouldn't have. It was them sometimes begging these manufacturers, give them a chance. And, wow. And literally, true story, we sat down, and sometimes for me, from Argentina on Zoom meetings with probably 4 to 5 of the major waterproofing manufacturers. And some of the meetings went okay. Some were positive. Some were, we like what you guys are doing. And then they'd come back a day or two or a week later. Sorry, guys, but we just can't open you up. And it was the 5th or 6th guy that came to the table that said, we're going to take the chance. And it was kind of, that was the day it all changed. And that's how we were able to get into it. The difference being we had one manufacturer, our competition had 10 to choose from. And so at that point, I think our hack was, let's get really good at one. Let's not get really good at, not worry about that we can't get the other 10, because let them worry about that. Let's get really good at one, and let's still deliver that extreme value on that one, and just see what happens. And we didn't have much of a choice. We had to do that. So, and I think that's how we did what we did, looking back on it.
And so did that knowledge that you gained, was it, okay, going to the manufacturer, getting training from them, working with them, YouTube, seeing YouTube videos out there, and just becoming basically the expert in that product?
Yeah. And what we learned is it's hard enough to become an expert on that one. How's our competition selling 10 and being an expert? And the truth is, we don't think they are. We think they're pretty good at 1 or 2. They're not very good at the other 8. And if we can be so much better than them on one, we have an advantage. Granted, fast forward to today, we've picked up 1 or 2 other lines, but we've still stuck with the one that gave us that chance 5 years ago. They're our horse, and they become a partner for us and have helped us grow.
Did the other 2 lines that you picked up, like, did you pursue them or did they pursue you?
I think it was more so we were pursuing them, but our customers were saying, guys, you need to talk to them. I'm going to go talk to them to tell them to come meet with you. So we were kind of put together by the customer, which I guess we're doing something right if the customer's begging for us to get something, and maybe
come
we're doing
take my
something
money.
right.
Take more of it, please.
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, were you an ID major, industrial distribution?
No, it wasn't. But I had quite a few friends that were. I was a kinesiology major, and I stayed and got my master's in sport management. And my first job out of college was with the Round Rock Express baseball team in Round Rock.
Super
and
cool.
It just so happened how I got kind of down the different path is one of our season ticket holders was like, I like the way you work. I think you need another job. So, and that was the end of my sport management career.
And did that take you down to Argentina, or did that come later?
That came later.
Okay.
I worked in Austin for my other company, and then Dallas for a few years for the same company, and then to Argentina.
Love that. So what's your big, hairy, audacious goal? This is something that we ask every single person that comes on Aggie Growth Hacks, where are you going? What's your moonshot? What's your 5 to 10 year, big, hairy, audacious goal? What the BHAG?
So I'm looking right at it on my screen. We actually have that, and we kind of have two of them. We kind of did a 3 to 5, and it was, and I'll read it directly. It was to establish a distribution network across Texas with 8 distribution facilities within a 4-hour delivery radius to provide that superior service. We talked about problem solving and technical expertise to the customer, where we've got 3 out of the 8 right now. So we got 5 to go. And that's kind of our 3 to 5 BHAG.
And then is it, okay, we've taken Texas, now we're going to regional. We're taking the world. There's going to be a distribution center in Argentina, and you'll just be working from there?
Possibly. It's funny you asked that. I think from my past experience at my other company who had distribution centers around the U.S., anytime there was a downturn in the economy, Texas seemed to withstand it every time, if not stay level or even go up. And kind of what we learned from that, we took to Admiral and said, let's just do Texas right. Mm-hmm. Why do we need to worry about? Because there's opportunities we've had to kind of think about Oklahoma, kind of think about Louisiana. And we said, let's just get Texas right first. There's so much here. Why would we do that? And that's kind of our focus right now. I would say our other BHAG that I'm looking at on the screen, we have more ideas and thoughts of technology kind of taking over this industry a little bit and being on the front end of that curve. And so we're talking to people, doing different things behind the scenes as we're growing our company, the day-to-day business. But how do we get to that point where almost we're looking at on the Amazon side of the commercial construction side? Because we do think it's going to eventually go that way. How do we be the first?
So let's flesh that out a little bit more for me. So you think that right now a GC or a subcontractor said, okay, I've got this job, I need this material, I've got a relationship with Admiral Distribution, that's how I'm going to get it. But do you think it's going to go the way of, I've got AmazonConstruction.com and this is what I need, and this is what I need to have it delivered?
Possibly. And we just think it's just going to get easier and easier for them to say, I think I mentioned earlier, waterproofing, you might have 4 or 5 different systems to select from and different components that make it more attractive, where it's going to come to a point where they might be able to press a button to say, give me the 4 options. I see all 4. I want that one, press it. I've got this many square feet. You press it again and it spits out your bill of materials and it can show up on a job site. That's our vision. And it might take 20 years to get there, but we think that exists out there.
So then how do you tie that? Because at least how I'm hearing it, is that what you sell is going to be even more commoditized, but Admiral Distribution, it sells the product, but it brings the value through education and working with them. Is that still the case, that you're going to be working on the front side so that you're their guy?
Absolutely.
It's just the commodity part of it is.
Yeah. And maybe I don't know what that vision looks like. I just think one of our goals always, how easy can we make it for the customer? And it kind of led us down that path. Yeah. Like, we're doing all this, we're quoting this, they're sending this. If we could build something that makes it so easy, how do we get to that point? And we don't have all the answers yet, but we have the thoughts.
Yeah. And your master takeoff sheet has got to be immense with that.
Exactly.
Oh
exactly.
Well, Todd, that was super cool. Loved hearing all these awesome stories and learning more about your company. For the lightning round, we have one rule and one rule only. Mine is a little bit different than Greg's. Greg's a little bit, more stringent. I'll give you a little bit more time on this, but you get 1 minute, right? 1 minute to answer each of these questions or less. You ready, Todd?
Okay. Ready.
Awesome. Okay, Todd, what is your favorite personal hack? This could be a book, podcast, whatever. Anything goes where Aggie Growth Hacks.
This may sound a little funny, but my mom actually gave me this book. But it's the Little Red Book of Selling. I refer to it often and I keep it next to the bed just to kind of remind myself. But at the end of the day, the gist of that book is building trust, creating that extreme value with your customer and building those relationships. And I think the core of my selling career, and what I hopefully bring to Admiral is that concept, is building that trust and those relationships with the customers. And I think some of the other things in that book are problem solving, preparation, prepare. And the more prepared you are, the more successful you're going to be at building those relationships.
That is so key. And a lot of entrepreneurs who struggle with selling don't see the basics of it. Every business has got to sell, but you've got to sell through value. And I love how you said extreme value. So if that's a personal hack, what's a business hack we can learn from you?
One of the things we do with each new employee, we actually give them a copy of Who Moved My Cheese, and they actually are required to write up a synopsis. I don't know how many of them chat GPT it, but I think just that adapting to change, which is what that book is about, and being able to change on a dime and just be proactive, be flexible, be positive. I think that's my business hack. And bringing that, I think both those, Little Red Book of Selling and even that is just bringing that positive attitude every day, and maybe mixing a little humor into it too. I think people forget that too, as far as keeping just the employees in the company. And I think we do a pretty good job of that here.
Love it. All right, Todd, what is the best advice that you've been given, and 96 bonus points for how you actually applied it?
I think the one thing I probably struggle with the most, specifically being one of the owners at this company, is not trying to do it all. And at my old company, I had one of my bosses said, you can't do it all. It's going to be there tomorrow. But just learning, I think I've had to really work at it, learning to give up some of the control, learning to give up some of the duties. I'm not sure that I've quite done that yet, but I realize I have to work on it every day to give that up for us to keep going to get to that goal, because we're going to need a lot more people than just me.
But that is so hard to do sometimes.
Very.
I just want you to do it my way.
Yeah.
But a lot of our employees are creative and they can solve it maybe in a different way, but just as well. So, well, Todd, how can the Aggie Growth Hacks family get in touch with you? How can we connect with you? We were talking about bird hunts in Argentina earlier on. So you're going to host an Aggie Growth Hacks?
Definitely host a hunt. I have in Argentina, barbecues called an asado, and I've perfected it over the years with the help of some Argentine friends. So be glad to host that at some point. But we're on LinkedIn, online, admiraldistribution.com.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Todd, for coming and sharing everything that you have today. It's super cool to, one, meet you, hear all your stories, and love everything that you shared with us today. Thank you so much.
Awesome, guys. I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, how about that, Ags? Was that pretty awesome or what? I know that I've got a whole page full of notes here of things that I took away from that interview with Todd. What was your biggest takeaway there, Greg?
Well, aside from being a little bit jealous of the views that he had when he was sitting there videoing the Aggie football games and that, I remember that Sugar Bowl Ohio State game. So I'm a little jealous of that. But what I really took away from it is his attitude that he probably said this 96 times, or if he's really red ass, it would have been 101 times, extreme value. And he talked about that a lot, because going and bringing value to your customers is something that we've got to do every single day. We can't take our customers for granted just because we worked with them in the past or whatever. We've got to find ways to bring them value. And whether that's knowing your chemistry so well that they come to you, or being open and honest with the GC and the architect at the beginning stage before they've even won the contract, to be able to invest and to bring value that way to increase the chances of winning that contract. And in doing that, that is so critical and key. And I think it's something that entrepreneurs should be reminded of, or the successful ones never forget. What about you, Chris?
Oh, 100% agree with that. So mine was very similar. And it's when I asked them how they broke into that really competitive world of waterproofing, right? And they were just kept getting denied by the manufacturers. And he said it really, comes down to this one thing, right? Customer service was part of that. But really what it came down to was getting good at that one thing, and not only just good at that one thing, being world class good at that one thing. Right. And I think that's something that we as entrepreneurs can take away from that, because if we are world class in anything, right? I mean, think of it in terms of golf or football, even, right? If you're world class in that one specific thing that you can do you think that your customers that would be a magnet? That would be an absolute magnet to bring your customers to you, coming and seeking you versus you having to go and chase people down, right? So I think that just makes the entire entrepreneurial world that much better if you just, again, like what you said, extreme value, extreme ownership, and take ownership and do that one thing to the absolute best that anybody in the entire world can do it. That's my takeaway.
That's awesome. And I love that. And it's super, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, back to back Aggie 100 wins. He's obviously doing something right. And they are that world class. So, Axe, that's going to do it for this episode of Aggie Growth Hacks. We hope that you enjoyed it. If you're not connected with Todd or Admiral Distribution, do yourself a favor and find them on LinkedIn. Search the internet. While you're on the internet, search out Aggie Growth Hacks. If you're not connected with Chris and I, we'd love to connect with you. We'd love to learn about you. We'd love to have you on a future episode of Aggie Growth Hacks where we can share your story with all of our listeners. Speaking of which, we hope that you are subscribing to Aggie Growth Hacks and give a big gig 'em thumbs up, so that this and all of our other episodes can get out to more people.
We also want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship at Texas A&M University. Since 1999, the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship has served as the hub of entrepreneurship at Texas A&M. If you're an Aggie entrepreneur or even a wantrepreneur, head on over to their website right now to find a program that's right for you. Just go to aggiegrowthhacks.com/McFerrin right now. Well, Ags, join us next time when we connect with another great Aggie entrepreneur and learn how they hack their growth. Until then, I'm Chris Hunter.
And I'm Greg Martin. Thanks and gig 'em.